The record books, all but shutting down the northeastern United States. Tonight, we'll tell you what it's like to be in charge of New York City's snow removal. From the Middle East tonight, assassinating an assassin, the Israeli one. And on NBC News In Depth tonight, a very dangerous flu season, what you need to know about this nasty virus.
From NBC News, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening from Fifth Avenue in midtown Manhattan, the heart of New York City. We're here and all up and down the East Coast, a monster snowstorm buried the normal bustle of life beneath deep drifts and freezing temperatures. This most populated region in America is now operating in slow motion, and the digging out will go on for days. It was much more than an inconvenience. This was a dangerous and expensive storm. We begin tonight with NBC's Robert Hager.
The huge blizzard roared from Kentucky through the Middle Atlantic and into the Northeast, affecting close to 100 million Americans, nearly 40% of the nation's population. Snow depths were stunning. Philadelphia, a record 30 inches, more than it normally gets in an entire winter. Newark, also a record 27 inches. Washington, a record 2, as high as 24 in suburbs. New York, 20. And Pocahontas County in the West Virginia mountains, up to 48 inches. That's 4 feet. Many had never seen so much snow.
Not in my lifetime. Absolutely not.
Travel was treacherous. The 122-mile New Jersey Turnpike, a key north-south link on the East Coast, was deserted. Absolutely deserted, as that state banned all but emergency vehicles from many highways. Hoboken, New Jersey, kept all outsiders out. Greyhound canceled or cut back service in 14 states. Airports staged a losing battle to keep runways open. More than 4,000 flights were canceled. Passengers left stranded at airports and hotels all over the East. Washington's 3 airports closed until sometime tomorrow. New York's 3 also closed until tomorrow. Hartford and Boston airports closed until further notice. Amtrak canceled 55 trains, half its service. In Charleston, West Virginia, one train unable to get further unloaded passengers into the cold.
Good Lord, it has been an experience.
98 passengers there taken to a hotel. In Washington, on this day, when the federal government was to at last reopen, the city was closed tightly. 110,000 furloughed government workers forced to stay home yet another day. Congress stayed in session only a few minutes. At the White House, President Clinton's national security advisor had to sleep in his office, unable to get home through the snow. New York City's schools closed for the first time since 1978. The United Nations closed as well. Diplomats of more than 150 nations stayed home. New York, one of the world's great ports, had to shut down shipping in its harbor. And even the mailmen couldn't get through. Deliveries canceled in Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Retail forecaster Isaac Lagnano.
We're talking about $1 billion aggregately of lost sales.
And there was damage. In New York, a car of the Long Island Railroad, which normally carries 250,000 passengers into the city, derailed. No one hurt. In Washington, more than 70 passengers had to be rescued after spending 6 hours overnight on a subway car stuck in the snow in freezing temperatures.
There's no heat on it. They like kicked in the heat as they cooled in the station.
The sheer weight of the snow caused rooftops to collapse. This one came down in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And in Clinton, Maryland, the roof of a nursing home collapsed into the dining area. No one was hurt, but 110 bedridden patients had to be evacuated in the bitter cold, many on stretchers, and taken to neighboring hospitals. A storm of staggering proportions. And here along Pennsylvania Avenue and elsewhere, it will take days to dig out in the cold. And now, just in time, more snow is expected toward the end of this week. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
And despite the deep snows in the Capitol, President Clinton, Senate Majority Leader Dole, and Speaker Gingrich were able to resume budget negotiations. Senator Dole says these talks now are at the, quote, make or break stage. This storm hammered villages and cities alike, but in New York, it was particularly troublesome. This city, after all, has millions of people, crowded streets, and concrete canyons of skyscrapers. The Department of Sanitation is in charge of snow removal. The man who runs the show is Commissioner John Doherty. His story tonight in his own words.
We got a record. We got a record storm. This is definitely the worst, not only from the depth of the snow, but the duration of it and the wind that we've experienced through the night and through today. The wind, we can't seem to get ahead of it. When you have 2.5 feet of snow on the side of the roadway and that wind picks up, you find that it's back in the roadway and you have to go back and re-plow it. We've been plowing since mid-afternoon yesterday. We'll probably plow for the next 24 to 36 hours before we have all the streets in the city opened up. My goal is, after the snowstorm stops, for 100% of the streets in this city to be open for vehicular traffic, then I think we've accomplished an awful lot. So the trick of it is, when you see yourself coming near the corner, raise the plow, bring it up. Over all the years I've been with the department, in a time of an emergency such as snow, you really see what sanitation people are made of. They really turn out, they feel proud of what they do, and they look forward to opening up streets and people saying thanks to them. You wait a lot of years to see a storm like this. We got the new kids now. This is going to be history, and I told them, remember it, and if you stick around the department long enough, you might get one, and you're going to have to address it. I'll be gone.
One of the problems with New York City, of course, is that there are so few places to dump the snow. They either have to truck it out of Manhattan or just keep moving it around for a few days. Wall Street was open today, but not for long. In a storm-shortened session, the Dow was up in very light trading. The NASDAQ lost a point. When we come back, it's not just the weather that's frightful, it's also the flu.
So we now have influenza in all parts of the country. And we can't say if it's peaked yet, because we haven't seen a decline. We've seen a steady increase.
A brutal season for flu misery. Just how brutal? We'll have some answers in depth for you tonight. And up next, the Middle East's most dangerous assassin. How the Israelis finally got it.
Wake up. Remember, we decided to start our morning walk today?
Can't wait.
Wake up to naturally decaffeinated Folgers with the richness of mountain-grown beans and all the aroma and taste of regular Folgers. In fact, if you didn't know Folgers decaffeinated was decaffeinated.
You know, with all these changes, I'm glad we didn't switch to decaffeinated. Nothing wakes me up like this.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Even decaffeinated.
Just needed to wake up.
I know, honey.
Every year, people have trouble keeping their resolutions to eat better. Now there's help. Whole grain total with 100% of 11 of the many vitamins and minerals you need. Call 1-800-FREE-BOX for a sample to help make this year a healthy and happy one.
My wife's an outstanding dentist. She said, you have to try Mentadent toothpaste.
Mentadent is the only fluoride toothpaste with baking soda and peroxide in a pump.
There are these tiny bubbles that get between the teeth. It was like a shot of fresh air.
Mentadent.
It works.
It starts with an advanced pain reliever. Then it's sealed in a smooth gel coating by a special patented process to create the first gel caplet advanced enough to be called Advil. Gentler on your stomach than aspirin. Yet 2 Advil gel caplets work better on tough pain than 2 extra-strength Tylenol tablets or caplets or gel caps. Nothing is proven to work better or last longer than Advil gel caplets. One more advance for Advil. Advanced medicine for pain.
From Israel tonight, we have a tale that makes James Bond look like kids' play. It's the story of how the Israelis finally got the engineer. That's what they called a notorious terrorist who was assassinated in Gaza last week by his cell phone. NBC's Martin Fletcher tonight on a high-tech, high-stakes whodunit.
How to assassinate an assassin, a man obsessed with his own security. The Israelis had his number, the engineer's cell phone number. 050-507-497. Intelligence sources say that number literally became the trigger for his assassination. Israel hasn't admitted it. They never do admit assassinations. But privately, security officials are gloating. How did the agents do it?
The most important thing was not the tool itself, the explosive material. The most important thing was the work of the agent, of the security service agent.
Kamal Hamad, a 41-year-old Palestinian builder, was an Israeli agent, according to his nephew. And the Israelis used Kamal to get to his nephew, Osama Hamad. He shared a room with the engineer in college. And last September, the engineer came to his trusted friend, asking him to hide him at his home in Gaza. From that moment, the Israelis began eavesdropping on the engineer's calls, but they couldn't get directly to him. Instead, and without the nephew's knowledge, his uncle, the secret Israeli agent, slipped the Motorola cell phone to Israelis who placed plastic explosives into the nephew's cell phone. Friday morning, 9 o'clock, the Israelis cut the phone line to the house, which forced the engineer to use the cell phone. The phone rings. It is the engineer's father.
I woke Yahya up and gave him my mobile phone.
Meanwhile, overhead, an Israeli plane reportedly detects the engineer's voice and electronically triggers the phone bomb, literally blowing off the engineer's head.
Then, as I left the room, there was an explosion.
So what happened to the Israeli agent Kamal Hamad? One report has him in America with a new identity and $1 million from the Israeli government. Another report has him still in Israel here in Jaffa. Either way, the engineer's friends want to know. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Jaffa, Tel Aviv.
And from Paris tonight, former French President Francois Mitterrand has died after a long battle with prostate cancer. In power for 14 years, he was one of France's most influential modern leaders. But so aloof and regal, he was nicknamed the Sphinx. His many contrasts made him a puzzle, an intellectual who was also a shrewd political operator, a socialist who became a champion of the free market, and one of the leaders of a movement to unify Europe, who wanted special glory, however, for France and his grand projects, like the Glass Pyramid at the Louvre, the new Opera House, a new National Library. Francois Mitterrand, dead at 79. When we come back, NBC News in depth tonight. If the winter weather isn't miserable enough, it's also a killer flu season. How bad is it? We'll have some answers for you in a moment.
Hey, you.
Who, me?
How about a little reward?
Are we talking diamonds?
Brownies.
I can eat brownies wearing diamonds.
Introducing Sweet Rewards. Brownies so rich, so chocolatey.
Ooh, go over that again.
You'd never guess they were fat-free.
Fat-free? Oh, that's why they call them Sweet Rewards.
Now all the best of Betty Crocker's in a fat-free brownie. New Sweet Rewards. Fat-free just got a whole lot more rewarding.
Betty ought to get a reward for these. Maybe diamonds.
Ricola. Ricola. Reach for Ricola, the all-natural herb cough drop from Switzerland.
Mom says that this is made for special people like me and Daddy. Think it's all those raisins make it so special?
With hundreds of sweet sun-made raisins, Post Premium Raisin Bran makes everybody feel like somebody special.
It's for special people. There it is. Just like I said. They say he's been in there for years, all alone. He just sits there, day after day, waiting. I've never seen him go out. Ever?
Maytag washers last longer than any other brand, with few repairs. That's why a Maytag repairman is so lonely. It's scary.
NBC News in depth tonight. If the brutal winter weather hasn't gotten to you yet, chances are the flu may have. The height of the traditional flu season is just beginning, and already there are signs it could be a record year, the kind of record that no one wants to have set. We begin our reporting with NBC's Kelly O'Donnell with a look at this year's flu misery index.
This year in the U.S., 25 to 50 million of us will come down with the flu. The wave of sneezes, fever, and feeling lousy came early this year. The flu season usually runs from November to March, with a peak in January or February.
We now have influenza in all parts of the country, and we can't say if it's peaked yet because we haven't seen a decline. We've seen a steady increase.
Children are the most likely victims. Surprisingly, right now, the elderly show more resistance to the current, most widespread strain. But older folks are still at greatest risk for serious complications, even death. 20,000 people die from severe bouts of the flu in an average season.
Well, the biggest misconception about the flu is that it's something very minor.
At a Las Vegas hospital, this man's flu led to more dangerous respiratory troubles.
Blood pressure 138 to 88 last.
We've seen some increase in the
pneumonia-related deaths, for instance, where last week we had 20 of them. We more normally would have a dozen of those in a week.
Flu sufferers are everywhere, but in these 15 states, the bug was so bad by the end of last month to be classified as widespread. And of course, the strains travel the globe. In Moscow, lines inside pharmacies with sufferers anxious to buy remedies, and Russian schoolyards left empty by the outbreak. And no one is immune. It was flu that kept Pope John Paul from celebrating Christmas Mass just 2 weeks ago. While most bouts of the bug are not so well publicized, the symptoms are indeed universal.
My bones are just aching and my muscles are fatigued.
The baby's been real sick with the fever and the coughing.
This year, watching the progress of the outbreak has one complication that has nothing to do with the flu virus. The federal shutdown put some of the government's tracking behind schedule, so the best figures won't be known until those federal workers catch up. But officials know the flu is notoriously hard to predict. It should be going around for at least 2 more months. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Los Angeles.
There are many hard questions that public health officials always try to answer this time of the year. Flu viruses are still a major mystery, however. Why does the flu always hit in winter? Why does it hit older people so much harder than the young? What does it take for a flu epidemic to spread out of control? To answer these questions, researchers have to understand how the viruses themselves work. We continue our in-depth reporting now with NBC science correspondent Robert Bazell on what we do know about flu.
The influenza virus. It is so common that most of us underestimate the danger, but it's a killer that spreads like wildfire.
It also has the capacity to change. I mean, I think that's one of the things about influenza that is frightening.
Dr. Mary Wilson of Mount Auburn Hospital and the Harvard School of Public Health is one of many experts who say we drastically underestimate the flu.
If a new disease were to appear that had the same consequences as influenza, how would we as a society react?
With great anxiety, I think there would be enormous fear. Clearly, there are more deaths in the United States occurring from influenza than Ebola or hantavirus. People tend not to be scared of influenza because they've heard about it since they were young children.
The yearly death rate among the sick and elderly is cause for concern in itself. But the big worry is that a new virulent strain could appear. That happened in the winter of 1918 and 1919, when influenza killed 500,000 people in the United States and 21 million around the world.
The influenza that was so devastating in 1918, 1919, preferentially seemed to cause deaths in young people, young, very healthy, robust people.
And it could happen again.
It could happen again.
If it does, the beginning is likely to occur a world away.
It's thought that many of the viruses that end up spreading around the world emerge initially from southern China.
Here, large numbers of people, pigs, and ducks live in close proximity. The virus travels easily from people to these animals and then back again. This cross-species infection, here and in other parts of the world, increases the chances for mutations.
So there's much more attention being paid to trying to culture and identify viruses from different parts of the world.
For now, the best defense against the flu is the vaccine, but it provides only 70% protection that lasts only 1 year, and it must be redesigned for each season's new strain of flu. Researchers at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, are part of the search for a lasting vaccine.
What we are doing is targeting those parts of the virus that can't mutate.
The hope is that a vaccine against that part of the virus, the red and blue dots in this computer image, would last for years and protect against new strains. Scientists do not know why the terrible outbreak occurred in 1918, or whether it will happen again. But they do know that as it continues to mutate, the flu virus presents a constantly changing threat. Robert Bazell, NBC News, New York.
One other measure of the extent of the flu season this year, the Centers for Disease Control says in the first 2 weeks in December, the flu accounted for 6% of all doctors' visits in this country. More news when we come back, and still later, storm stories. The good, the bad, the ugly, the memorable from this huge blizzard.
Have you tried multigrain Cheerios?
I did that multi-grain thing back in the 70s. I don't want to do it again.
Interesting.
Boring.
I like them.
Only 1 gram of fat. Yeah, not 1 ounce of flavor.
Very good.
A little sweet?
Crunchy.
4 kinds of O's.
Toasted with a touch of brown sugar.
Okay, but this will be like deja vu all over again.
It's nutritious, but surprisingly delicious.
Oh, yeah. It's a 90s kind of thing. I like it.
I can eat corn on the cob, and I can eat the apples, as long as I've got super polygrip on these dentures. I know that it works. I mean, it holds my teeth in place. Using the super polygrip, I can continue auctioneering. Bid 35 and now bid 40, now 5, 45 and
The fact that dairy foods and my stomach don't agree won't keep me from enjoying every bite of ice cream. I just take New Lactate Extra Strength. It has 50% more of the natural ingredient that helps me digest dairy.
New Lactate Extra Strength for the love of dairy.
Warning. Experts predict the worst cold and flu season in years. Just in time, Theraflu. Hot liquid relief. When it's got to work, it's got to be Theraflu.
Bayer. Powerful pain relief and so much more.
When you have arthritis, like we do, what you want most is relief. And that's just what we get with Arthritis Foundation pain relievers.
I knew I could trust it when I saw the Arthritis Foundation seal on the package.
Now, there are 4 different medicines. Aspirin-free, ibuprofen, safety-coated aspirin, and nighttime. They're all terrific.
And part of the purchase price goes to research to find a cure.
What other medicine does that?
Arthritis Foundation pain relievers for relief you can count on until we find a cure.
It's wonderful medicine.
It is.
Dateline Tuesday. Does this sound familiar?
You said you knew where we were going, and then we got there, and then you didn't know.
Could the way you fight say something about your marriage? Learn how you can work it out. Dateline Tuesday.
Yet another giant defense industry deal to report tonight. Lockheed Martin, the nation's biggest defense contractor, says it will now buy Laurel Corporation for $10 billion. This deal must be approved by shareholders and the government. No word yet if any jobs will be affected. And balloonist Steve Fawcett lifted off today from the Black Hills of South Dakota, trying to become the first to circle the globe non-stop in a balloon. He hopes to make it in 3 weeks. Big news on the West Coast tonight. Thousands turned out to see Newport, Oregon's newest resident, Keiko, the killer whale, who found fame as the star of the Free Willy films. First day in his new home, a 2 million-gallon tank that's 4 times the size of his old pool at a park in Mexico. Time now for NBC News Online, beyond the day's headlines. Perhaps no one was watching the snow more closely today than one New York City car dealer and some of its customers. Potemkin promised that all the cars, at least in a year-end special, 204 of them, would be free if it snowed 4 inches or more today between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. But the blizzard died. It appeared that the required snow would fall short. The only thing free would be the very welcome publicity for the car dealer. On the other side of the country, you guessed it, a heat wave in Southern California. They could only read about the big blizzard as temperatures continued in the 70s and in the 80s in California. When we come back to the cold, tales of survival beating the blizzard of '96.
Did you want regular or decaf? Hello? Regular or decaf? Regular?
Well, at least you know how to keep it from spilling. The powerful Accord V6 from Honda, possibly the world's easiest decision.
Introducing an Alka-Seltzer that goes where no Alka-Seltzer has gone before. New Alka-Seltzer caplets. Now you can get fast relief for acid indigestion or heartburn with headache in an easy-to-swallow caplet. Anytime, anywhere. New Alka-Seltzer caplets.
Well, Frank, whole new life, huh? All that profit sharing. Where you headed? H&R Block.
Changes in your life mean changes in your taxes. So come to H&R Block, because it's your money.
While a brother may be hard to propel,
The Hoover Power Drive is self-propelled, making cleaning so easy, even a brother could do it.
Hoover, nobody does it like you.
My dad has been my dentist since my first tooth has come in. This is the first toothpaste that he's ever sent me.
This is Tartar Control Mentadent with fluoride, baking soda, and peroxide. Mentadent helps stop tartar before it forms. Tartar Control Mentadent.
It has everything.
On the face of things, Tavist seems to cost a bit more than these cold medicines, but prices can be deceiving. See, one little 12-hour Tavist is so effective at relieving your congestion and sneezing that to get close to the same relief, you'd have to take 4 of these, or up to 6 of these, or 6 of these. So with these guys, you could pay more than twice as much, and you don't even get continuous relief. Now, there's something to feel sick about. Prescription strength Tavist. Relief you can count on.
Coming up tomorrow morning on Today, a look around the country at what now ranks as the worst storm of the last half-century.
So join us tomorrow.
And see what a difference today makes.
These monstrous snowstorms can be dangerous, of course, but they can also be joyful. They bring us together. They bring quiet to the city. They slow the frantic pace of these big metropolitan areas, and they give us stories that we can tell again and again. NBC's Dawn Fratangelo has been listening to some of them.
In snowy Times Square, New Yorkers were trudging down the middle of Broadway as if on parade. All along the eastern seaboard, there were few cars and a flurry of survival stories. Like these two, who had to haul luggage 5 blocks to a hotel that wasn't booked.
So you're having a nice stay in New York, basically.
This is like what New York's about, isn't it?
In Pittsburgh, little Mark Stone came in with a storm. He couldn't wait for snowbound paramedics. Instead, a neighbor delivered him with the help of a 911 operator.
I told him to make sure that the baby was crying, breathing, and we had a good delivery.
On Long Island's Oyster Bay, a daring rescue by the Coast Guard. 4 duck hunters and their dog were stranded when their boat became stuck in ice.
I was pretty excited, thinking that, hey, there's 4 guys out there that we can help, that we can get out of a situation that they might not be able to get out of.
The hunters plan to save the 2 ducks they did get for a celebration.
They may be hard to recognize, but these are New York City ambulances, and they can't maneuver in this kind of snow. So for the first time ever, National Guard vehicles are being used to help paramedics respond to emergencies.
Deployed by New York's governor, 16 military Humvees are going where ambulances cannot.
We haven't met an obstacle yet that we haven't head on.
They're ready for this kind of battle. Peacekeepers in Bosnia are also using them.
Good luck to you.
Jack Cohen thought he was an expert in the snow after a ski vacation in Colorado. Then he came home to a blizzard. That's when he broke his leg.
And you may have some degree of pain.
I was in Aspen for 2 weeks, where you would think I would have fallen and broken my leg, and I come back to New York and I'm walking, and I fell. And it's never happened before, so I'm quite shocked.
Meanwhile, back on Broadway, all but one show is canceled, and the struggles continue.
Bye, we'll see you in Florida.
That is, if the airport's ever open. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News, New York.
That's Nightly News for this Monday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'm going to get out of the cold for a while. See you back here or from somewhere again tomorrow night.
The world is now watching the NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.